Aaron, can you hear us?
I can indeed. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you. You're calling from New Zealand.
That is correct.
Hi, Aaron.
Hi, Claire. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. Thanks so much for calling us. I really appreciate this interview.
For sure.
Now, there's been stuff in the media all around the world about Senator Xenophon coming out and calling for a criminal investigation into the practices of Scientology, and even our Prime Minister, Mr Rudd, here in Australia, has raised concerns as well. And you've been mentioned in the media. You were an ethics officer for the Church of Scientology in their Sea Orgs.
That is correct. Yes, I was.
Yes.
Yes, I was. I actually worked for them for 2 years here in Australia.
Yep.
In 89, 1990, and early 91 before I went off and worked in their American operations for a year in Florida, and then three and a half years in the Los Angeles head offices of the Church of Scientology.
Yeah. And you were a part of the Sea Org between the ages of 15 and 22.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you were brought up in the church?
I was.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, sorry to interrupt. Can you just explain what Sea Orgs is? I wasn't here.
Yeah, do you want to explain?
The Sea Org is an abbreviation for the Sea Organisation, literally SEA, Sea Organisation. In 1967, Scientology worldwide was was out of control, and the founder, L. Ron Hubbard, was wanted for questioning in various countries. So he literally created a flotilla of boats and in secrecy travelled around the world on these boats, controlling Scientology through telex and phone communication lines. And this organisation grew on this boat and was established as a paramilitary-styled organisation, literally with military uniforms and naval-based origins. And then when they were powerful enough, they returned to the United States and established what they called land bases. And ever since that moment, they've been in total control of the Scientology worldwide network.
Yeah. And I understand that L. Ron Hubbard said that when you join the Sea Org, you become the greatest person in the universe.
This is correct.
However, what happens when you leave?
The sheer irony of this is that when you're recruited for this organisation, you're told, we need you for life, we need you for this life, the next life, and every other life you'll have. And you do this, you're one of the most elite people on the planet, you're in the top percentage of intelligence, you're superior to your fellow man for doing this. After you join, though, you're told and shown policies that inform you that if you ever attempt to leave, then you're hurting Scientology and the Sea Org, and you're actually a degraded being.
Yep.
And these are his words.
Yeah, a degraded being.
And it's quite a. I mean, words can't. No one should call another human being degraded, especially when they dedicate their entire life to what they believe at that time is the best cause that they could be involved in.
Aaron, this is Jack. What made you go into Scientology?
He was raised.
Oh, you were raised.
I was raised into it. I did very little Scientology as a child, but when I was 15, I had my father took his own life just before I turned 15.
Right.
And the Sea organisation over in Australia and Sydney heard about this, and they sent two people over, and they read my files.
Yep.
My private confidential auditing files, and looked at the details and saw how I felt about my father's death and that I felt somehow responsible for it. And they used this as a way of recruiting me by saying, look, if you join the Sea organisation and help mankind, you can prevent this from happening to other people. I mean, you don't want other people to have their fathers die, do you?
Yeah. So they gave you a chance. They gave you a chance to think about whether you wanted to do it, or you just went straight in as a child?
No, there was such an urgency on it that there was, planet Earth, the clock is ticking for planet Earth, we must do this now. Literally, the decision had to be made right there that night within that hour, and then documents were drawn up to get me over to Australia within the next day.
Wow.
Now, I understand that the purpose of the Sea Org is to put ethics on the planet.
That is correct. It's quite a different goal from the creed of Scientology. Whereas the Sea organisation purports and puts out there the creed of the church, their own private policies, which are written but they will never release to the public, actually show that their purposes are to control and dominate and get ethics in on the planet. And not only that, but to eliminate any sources within society that are anti their activities.
Yeah. Now, we've presented a couple of months ago, we went quite into depth about the Church of Scientology, and we interviewed Carmel Underwood, an ex-Scientologist, and we had another interview with an ex-Scientologist, and we talked to members of Anonymous, which you would know about. And from what we've learned is that that there has been a lot of breaching of ethics by the Church of Scientology and the Sea Orgs. And I think you've been very honest in what you've said, what you did within Sea Org, and you've even described yourself as a monster whilst you were in the Sea Org. Do you want to talk to us about that?
Yes. And yes, I have.
I know you find this difficult.
It's difficult to talk about because it's very hard to look at yourself back and see just the sheer consequences of your actions.
Yeah.
And it took years after being out to fully awaken myself to just the sheer consequences of taking away liberties from people and the effects that then had on their lives.
Yeah.
So even some of the people I got into, I recruited people into the Sea organisation.
Yeah.
Some of these people I actually grew up with, and to this day we still do not communicate ever again, even though we were childhood friends.
Yeah.
Because of the devastation that resulted from this. And I'm afraid to say that there was no one, I want Scientologists and I want public to understand this, that there was no one in that organisation more dedicated to making Scientology succeed than me.
Yeah, yeah.
I gave my life 105 working hours per week, every week, without a break for years. I was more dedicated than any Scientologist. And yes, I did become this monster because I just had to get done what needed to be done.
Yeah.
To preserve that church.
Yeah, that's right, because I understand that what happens is that people become assets and part of a machine, that they're not seen as human beings, but actually staff members are called coins.
That's right, coins, because they have a value, like in personnel.
Yeah.
Literally, you have a ledger, we'll exchange this coin for that coin so I can get this person posted over here.
Yeah.
I think that hearing this from a public, hearing this, or even a Scientologist listening to the radio now would find this very hard to believe.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is that public Scientologists themselves that know of the Sea organisation won't join it because they've heard the horror stories and they see the conditions that they live in and they don't want to be submitted to it.
Yeah.
But they actually won't do anything about it either. They'll stand back and say, well, that's how they want to live, even though they're giving me Scientology, it's okay for them to live in these atrocious conditions.
Yeah.
But the reality is that most Scientologists out there that know of the SEAL wouldn't dare join it.
Yes.
And the ones that do, more than, we're talking in the history of the SEAL, there are more people that have left.
You did for the organisation, part of your work involved telling women to have abortions. Is that correct?
It's true. When you're there, you have to take a look at it from this point of view. There's such an urgency to get everything done that the human qualities disappear, and you end up looking at people as how much money can they give to the church?
Yeah.
Are they capable of giving more donations? Can I take the staff member? Can he do what I need him to do? Mm-hmm. And you don't develop relations with these people, and sooner enough they become part of like a piece of furniture. Everything has a value associated with it.
So
when they lose that value, they're no longer worth anything to you.
So a pregnant woman in Sea Org was she was not as valuable because she was going to leave the Sea Org, and you'd have to have her post filled. Is that the reason?
Well, she's actually a liability.
A liability.
No, they weren't just not assets anymore. They're actual liabilities, because not only were they considering having a child, the problem with that is that now they're going to be off the church's lines, not on services looking after this child, and they can't work. So it's not just that they weren't worth anything, they were actually looked at as a liability. Having the child is a liability because it means if they do stay in the Sea Org or try to come back later, even when the child's maybe 4 or 5, then we have to look after that child, we have to feed that child, we have to teach that child. You have to give family time, maybe an hour a week, so that the parents can see that child, and you actually look at these people as liabilities.
I'm just wondering, if anybody's told people in Scientology that children are part of the human race, that you do, that's a great asset that you have that helps you to get money out of people, do anything to nurture people, into your religion or out of it,
The ultimate trick is when you have people that are so dedicated to a religion that they can separate and believe that separation from their own families would be in the greater good of their own personal survival and the long-term good of their own families. We're talking about something so sick. It's hard to comprehend.
I just wonder when you say the urgency, what the urgency is around. It sounds very Nazi Germany, like there's a lot of, in Scientology, there's a lot of shifting of blame into things that people are doing, like, I'm doing this because of that. I just wonder where because somebody's, almost like brainwashed me, it sounds like, in Scientology. I'm just wondering where that urgency, if you can elaborate a bit more on, you said everything seems so urgent.
When you're within this organisation, the church, you're pushing to other people that the enemies are everywhere, that the enemies are far and thick between, the enemies are winning, the enemies are creating more, the enemies are psychiatrists, the enemies are doctors that are trying to cure cancer when it's really just something in your own head, when it's a creation of your own mind. And anybody out there that gets fed information that convinces them to be anti-Scientology is also now an enemy, and these people have to be fixed, they have to be corrected, and we're running out of time, and if we don't do this, then Scientology might fail before, world domination takes effect by an unknown enemy. And this is the constant threat. And when you have people in a constant state of believing that the time to act is now,
Yeah.
they overlook the chance to evaluate. They overlook whether or not they can sit down and view the information. I mean, these people in the SEALG are not allowed to watch TV. They're not allowed to listen to the radio. They are not permitted to read the newspaper. And they are informed that they nor their families are allowed to read any website or any information that is anti-Scientology at all. Most people in the SEALG don't even know that the Church of Scientology has in fact lost many court cases around the world. When you're in there, you're told they win every single one.
Yeah. Now I want to talk about what you were required to do as the ethics officer in Sea Org, and you said that you had to, or that you participated in forced confinement and stuff like that, and also that it's not the exception that Sea Org members were a party to this, to treat each other like this, to either mete out bad treatment or to receive it.
That is correct. One thing I want to point out is that most SEALG members have their position in the organisation and they do what they do. They're in a fixed location. My job as the ethics officer or in the communications office, we're always around. We're like the police. We're always moving through the organisation daily. Therefore, it was my job to take these people into a separate office away from their colleagues and put them through these procedures. So most SEALG members sit there until it's their turn and they don't see what their fellow SEALG member goes through.
Yes.
Although now we've got thousands of affidavits coming out about what they thought were the exceptions when really it was going on the whole time. I'll give you one example. I received a letter yesterday from a mother who has not been able to talk or see her daughter for 8 years in the SEALG because every time her daughter tries to get leave, they always do this interrogation on her and find out that she's got a doubt about being in the SEALG, so they won't let her leave. She wrote me a letter and asked me, how can she help? I had to write this woman back and say not only that I wanted to help, I had to confess to her that it was me that ordered her to disconnect from her own mum, her own daughter. It was me.
Yes.
The email response I got back was just after hours of tears from her going, how could you have done that to my daughter? She was beautiful.
Yeah.
And I answered her back saying, I know. I'm terribly sorry.
Yeah, I understand this is difficult.
how do you do this? I had another email yesterday from a person who saw the video on the internet.
Yeah.
This young lady at the age of 17, I took into my office, Laura is her name, and I told her that her family was anti-Scientology and anti-SEAL, and that the best thing for her to do in her survival was to disconnect.
Yeah.
She chose to follow that.
Yes.
Now, years later, she finally managed to get out, and now she's suing the church.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And she was forced to have an abortion.
Yeah.
Now, if I hadn't have done what I did to her back then,
Yes.
if I'd been stronger morally, if the parents had had access to her, she never would have gone through that experience.
Yeah. But you're coming out
if
now.
Senator Xenophon does not get this inquiry, if Malcolm Turnbull does not allow this to occur, the Senate inquiry, we're going to get another letter in 3 years saying not only can she not speak to her, but her whereabouts will be unknown.
Yeah. And
It's hard to believe it, I know.
no, and I understand that you might be facing federal charges yourself in relation to this behaviour.
Yes, there's not a lot I can do about that, unfortunately. But I mean, I sat on the fence for several years trying to see if anybody else would speak, and they were all just too scared. They were intimidated. And then I realised that regardless of consequence, every day that I don't do this, maybe I do deserve to go to jail. Maybe I do deserve to go to a court of law. I think I do. I mean, if some of these people that I did this to came up and said to the police he did that, I'm not going to lie. I'm going to say I did that.
Yes.
If they're going to prosecute me, they're going to prosecute me. I did do those things. I thought I was doing the right thing at the time.
And
I mean, I was following church policy. I didn't make these decisions up arbitrarily.
Yes.
These policies exist in the church to do what I did, and I thought I was doing the right thing at that time. I mean, Australia's my home. I'm over here in New Zealand now because some of my family live over here, but Australia's my home, and I'm going to come back there and face this. And if the Australian Federal Police are going to prosecute me, then I'm going to have to defend myself, but I can't deny what I did.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and I understand that you said something to me about that you're not actually supposed to be speaking publicly, or you lose protection under the law. Can you explain about that?
When Mr. Nick Xenophon made his statements to Parliament, he was protected under parliamentary privilege, and thank God we have that privilege in this country. Okay, that a politician can say that, because he can always be corrected later on by an investigation which shows his allegations were false.
Yes.
Okay, and I was informed after that after he had spoken in Parliament, that if I spoke out after that, that would be considered a waiving of the source of information, and there was nothing to stop anybody, including the church, pursuing me.
Yes.
The reason why I breached that and wanted to speak out is because we are talking about liberties of other people, and I'm not prepared to sit back for one more minute and let another abortion be coerced, another parent told they can't speak to their child, another child shipped off to the United States in their secret location in Los Angeles where they can't even see public people. I'm not going to allow that to happen for one more minute.
Yes. I think you're very brave, and you're showing a high level of integrity, and I know that you have a lot of pain about what you did in the past, but I think you're doing what you can to correct that now. I understand that you sent your own brother to the rehab force and the penal colony. Do you want to speak to us about that? I think it's important that people understand the level of control that the church and the Sea Orgs have over their members. People talk about, evil Lord Xenu and all that sort of stuff, and Scientology is a big joke, but there's been abuses of human rights here. So if you'd like to speak a bit about that, about your brother.
Okay, well, the penal colony is known as their, quote, rehabilitation force. And it's the organisation where members are made to wear black outfits. They are not permitted to walk. They must run. They must do hard labour. They are not allowed to communicate to any other human beings via written or spoken word unless they're ordered to. And it's a harsh life where most people fail. and when they leave, they're just too messed up. And in Los Angeles, my brother did the most horrific thing and touched and heavy petted with another female.
That was his crime?
That was his crime. And
consensual?
That was his crime.
It was consensual touching and kissing?
Yes, it was consensual.
Yeah.
Was it another Sea Org member? Was the woman a Sea Org member?
Yes, she was. And because he was my brother, after the justice action was taken, I was asked, what do you want to have done with him? And I said, send him to the RPF, send him to the penal colony.
Wow.
My own brother. I mean, oh my... He's my own brother, for God's sake.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, he's just a year younger than me.
Yeah.
He just was... And I had to be that person, that tough SEAL member, that messenger that could do that, to send the message out to everybody else that no one gets away with it here, not even if you're my own brother. And then I watched what he went through in there, and the years after he left, the troubles that he had with the idea of females and anything to do with them, because of the punishment that he received for just being a young boy, wanting to just explore being a young man, for God's sake.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, you spoke a lot about that on your YouTube videos. And more and more Sea Org members are coming out and speaking about this stuff, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was married in the Sea organisation briefly, and my own wife was interested in trying to leave, but she knew she'd best dare not speak to me about it. And one day she came home to my birthing, and she told me that she was pregnant. You know, and I told her, if you're pregnant, you're going to get an abortion. I don't want that child. It's anti-Sea Org. We're here, and that was the end of my marriage with her, because she came back and told me later on that, you know, it turned out to be a false hoax, that she wasn't really pregnant. But at that point it didn't matter to me, because in my eyes her purposes weren't set on being in the Sea Org for life, and I wanted to divorce her.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, how did you break away from this level of mind control? Because you were obviously totally controlled, you totally were immersed in this culture. How did you break away?
It's what happened in 1995 that was just terrifying. In the major international location in Los Angeles, things went way out of control. We started disciplining people all over the place for just any given reason, and we started having staff leave. We had to replace them, we had to recruit, and the turmoil that was created. And I stood back and looked at this and went, according to Scientology, it says you can measure the success of any organisation by its immediate environment. And I looked around my environment and realised how many people were getting divorces, how many people were giving up the option of having families. Mm-hmm. And to me, I went, oh my God, I'm creating this. We are creating this. These are the most unhappy people I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. And I still didn't have the courage to leave until, and I don't know how much I should say about this, but some intimidation tactics were employed on me outside, and I realised that there was a chance that I was going to become a heavy target for them, and I ran for my life. And they came chasing after me through Los Angeles, and I made an agreement to come back if they were not to go see my family in New Zealand, not to approach my friends in Australia, and to leave me and my brother alone, and my mother in New Zealand. And in exchange for that agreement, I had to agree to undergo 6 weeks of interrogation locked up. If I didn't agree to it, they were going to firstly label me a suppressive person. Yep. They were going to disconnect me from anybody that I'd known, and my whole life was, the last 6 years, was the Sea organisation. Mm-hmm. That included trying to disconnect me from my own mother. And I couldn't bear the consequence of that, so I did it. And after that, I was just so numb that I left. But I believe it or not, after I left the Sea Org, I still believed in Scientology.
Yes, yes.
I left, but I believe it or not, after I left the Sea Org, I still believed in Scientology.
Yes. I've heard this from other ex-Scientologists I've spoken to, that they struggle with that. Sorry, go on.
Finally, something happened a year and a half after I left, after further intimidation from the Sea organisation stating, you can't work with this person, you can't work with any Scientologist unless you come back into the Sea organisation. And I finally walked away because the intimidation just got too much. And then I met a woman called Rebecca Anderson in Melbourne, and she just opened my eyes and had enough love for me to sit down and ask me to just evaluate and look. And she was so patient with me, and it just started to open my eyes. Yeah. And then once I opened up my eyes I left in 96 from the Sea Org, and I left Scientology in 98. And by the year 2000 rolled around, I started looking on the internet, and I found people were trying to speak out. And every time they spoke out, they were being sued by the church. They were being criticised by the church. They were having letters put out to their friends and people that knew them about their crimes that, quote, these people had done.
Yeah.
And I was scared, and I tried to speak out. The process to undo this is not easy, and some people will never, ever reconcile Scientology.
Yes.
I don't know if I could tell you what the exact mechanism was. I don't know, but it would go along the lines of reading other books. Just read, because this is forbidden.
Yeah, read anything.
Just read, get education. Read this book, whether it's pro, not just about Scientology, to or from against Scientology. Read books on science, read books on philosophy, read books on, and then it dawned to me, I'm reading these books, and I realized the word love didn't even appear in the thousands of flag orders and policy letters that I read.
Yes.
And it dawned on me, it was never about this man Ron Hubbard never loved,
and
the Sea Org it was never part of their policy to do this. The words hate and enemy were mentioned everywhere, and so it clicked for me, and for others it's clicked, and for some, I'm afraid to say, I don't think it will ever click.
Yes. Look, we're going to have to wrap it up soon, but I'd like to have you on again and perhaps talk about more about leaving the church, and perhaps have a segment on how we can support people to explore looking outside of the church and to read other things. And, for people who are thinking of leaving or just questioning, I know that's a very difficult thing for members of Scientology, and particularly the Sea Org, to even question things is like a crime in itself.
It is a crime. If they even mention that they're reading a book that's not necessarily anti-Scientology, but let's say questions religion, questions belief or science, then what will happen is they will get in trouble.
Yeah, or sex or love or anything like that.
I'd love to talk about. I'm happy to be on your show again.
That'd be great.
Thanks,
just
Aaron.
one last thing I want to ask you about is Anonymous. Well, how do you feel about the group Anonymous?
I've spoken to several members of Anonymous. They're a very gung-ho organisation.
Yep.
There's no question about that. And some of them are in there because they know the injustice here. And although some of their knowledge on the true incidents in the Sea Org is sometimes weak, but some of these people know a great deal, I feel I will support them. Because they're assisting in a cause. Now, maybe they don't fully understand everything behind this cause, but they've seen enough.
Right.
And they know enough people that have been hurt.
How would you feel about, after we talk to you, finish this interview, I play the message to Scientology from Anonymous? Would you be all right with that?
I'd love to hear it.
Okay. Why don't you stay on the line while we play it? Thank you so much, Aaron. I personally support what you're doing. I think you're very brave. And, what ex-members need to hear is from people like you, and to stand up and say, I take responsibility for my actions.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Cheers.
Ready, Jack?
Yep.
Hello, leaders of Scientology. We are Anonymous. Over the years, we have been watching you, your campaigns of misinformation, your suppression of dissent, your litigious nature. All of these things have caught our eye. With the leakage of your latest propaganda video into mainstream circulation, the extent of your malign influence over those who have come to trust you as leaders has been made clear to us. Anonymous has therefore decided that your organization should be destroyed. For the good of your followers, for the good of mankind, and for our own enjoyment, we shall proceed to expel you from the internet and systematically dismantle the Church of Scientology in its present form. We recognize you as serious opponents, and do not expect our campaign to be completed in a short time frame. However, you will not prevail forever against the angry masses of the body politic. Your choice of methods, your hypocrisy, and the general lawlessness of your organization have sounded its death knell. You have nowhere to hide, because we are everywhere. You will find no recourse in attack, because for each of us that falls, 10 more will take his place. We are cognizant of the many who may decry our methods as parallel to those of the Church of Scientology. Those who espouse the obvious truth that your organization will use the actions of Anonymous as an example of the persecution of which you have for so long warned your followers. This is acceptable to Anonymous. In fact, it is encouraged. We are your SPs. Over time, as we begin to merge our pulse with that of your church, the suppression of your followers will become increasingly difficult to maintain. Believers will become aware that salvation needn't come at the expense of their livelihood. They will become aware that the stress and the frustration that they feel is not due to us, but is sourced much closer to them. Yes, we are SPs, but the sum of suppression we could ever muster is eclipsed by that of your own RTC.